Welcome to Fake Presidents, a real podcast about, well, you know.
Each episode will take a deep dive into a fictional American president from pop culture to see just how much fiction there really is. I'm Eric Buckman, a very former political consultant turned TV writer.
And I'm Ben Orr, a former journalist, sometimes speechwriter, and all-the-time TV producer. And today, Eric, we are going to be talking about an epic fictional president.
Epic fictional president, less than epic movie.
Way less than epic movie. It just was always like not that good or good looking of a movie. But you know, we're not a movie podcast. We don't review movies.
No, we're not. But I will say I always regarded this movie as a cult classic because it limped so poorly into theaters and would have been perceived to have been rediscovered on home video, much the way Office Space was. And it does get invoked a lot. The term Idiocracy does get used, but no, I the more research I did on this and talking to people and telling them we're doing this movie, the more I found out no one has seen this film, Ben.
Not a lot of people have, but this film we're talking about is, of course, 2006's Idiocracy, directed by Mike Judge.
Not our first Mike Judge movie. Our first directed and or written by him. But he was in Spy Kids 2, Island of Lost Dreams.
Yes, if you live in the Austin area, you are contractually obligated to appear in a Robert Rodriguez movie. I
feel like this movie might have fallen into the same kind of zone that Wag the Dog landed in, a movie that we also should cover at some point.
I remember liking that movie.
Yeah, except it's a movie whose title has far outlived the movie's actual impact as a film. People invoke Wag the Dog whenever any sort of news item seems to distract from, a personal indiscretion of somebody in politics. Yeah. Idiocracy got invoked a lot starting in, say 2016.
Yeah, give or take 2016.
Yeah, but the movie itself seems to not have the strongest cultural footprint, and I think as we talk about it, we might discover why.
Well, it's a very strong premise.
Strong premise. I remember in 2006, I was one of the 5 people in Los Angeles who saw this in theaters the one week that it was actually open in like 5 cities across the country. And I think everyone knew it was being dumped when it was being dumped. Like it was by that point in 2006, we knew what the game plan was for movies that they feel like they can't market. In fact, it got written about a great deal as like an example of a movie that gets dumped purely because of contractual obligations to the filmmakers and stars. Wait, does Luke Wilson, did he have it in his contract? It had to be theatrically released?
No, it had to have been a Mike Judge thing. I mean, Mike Judge definitely had like FU money by that point.
My name is Andrew Shepard, and I am the president.
Our president, because this is a podcast about fake presidents,
yes,
is President Dwayne Elizondo Mountain Dew Herbert Camacho, played by Terry Crews.
Terry Crews, one of his earlier performances, I think this is probably after White Chicks, which is why I think most people kind of really noticed him.
Was he in the middle of Everybody Hates Chris at this point?
Probably. Yeah, he was in the middle of hating Chris. I mean, I think he loved Chris.
He was a good dad. Like, that dad, I understood that now that I'm a dad. The dad, there was like, I think it was in the pilot episode where Chris is talking about like how his dad sees everything in terms of money. And It's like, you left like 75 cents worth of chicken on your plate, son. You're like, that's exactly how I see food now with my children.
Yeah. Okay, Terry Crews plays the president in this movie, written and directed by Mike Judge. Came out in 2006. Not a huge hit. What more do we have to say about this movie before we cover The President, Ben?
I mean, it had a pretty recognizable cast. Stars Luke Wilson, Maya Rudolph, Dax Shepard's in it. A lot of great cameos. Stephen Root, Thomas Hayden Church. There's an uncredited Sarah Rue.
Oh, we can't forget Justin Long as Dr. Lexus. So, I mean, look, this cast is stacked from everyone you've ever seen from your favorite Apple commercials.
No, not true, because my favorite is John Hodgman. I'm a Hodgehead.
Okay, what's this movie about, Ben?
This movie asks the question, what if only dumb people procreated in the world, pretty much? And it takes that premise to 500 years in the future where everybody's dumb as shit.
it takes the stance that the world is essentially dumbing itself down because the birth rates of dumb people is higher than the birth rates of smart people. Therefore, at some point in the future, you'll wind up with all dumb people and no smart people. And there are two exceptions to that in the future. You have Luke Wilson playing Joe, a.k.a. Not Sure, because his name officially gets changed to Not Sure when he's unable to answer some rather confusingly worded questions from a computer at some point in the future. And then you also have Maya Rudolph as Rita. Joe is a soldier in the present day who's just trying to literally coast through life.
He's literally, the Army tells him, they don't tell him that, but he's the most average person in the U.S. military.
Gentlemen, meet Joe Bowers, our first subject for the human hibernation experiment. Mr. Bowers was chosen primarily for how remarkably average he is. Extremely average in every category.
And whereas Rita, she is a prostitute who gets recruited for the same scientific experiment that Joe does, simply because they could not find another volunteer to conscript. Is it volunteer if you've been conscripted? But yeah, they could not find another matching person in averageness to him.
Yeah.
I'm still not totally clear why they couldn't just grab another woman from the army.
They wanted a sex worker to go 500 years in the future, and for the sake of the story. For the sake of the story, it had to be a sex worker.
For the sake of the story and for the sake of the supervising government scientist who is overseeing the project, who seemed to really enjoy the efforts it took.
It's a good bit. It's a good run.
Yeah, the military scientist who had to fully ingratiate himself into not just the good graces of Rita's pimp.
Upgrade. Her pimp upgrade.
With 2 Ds, as he says, for a double dose of this pimping.
But he apparently had to fully ingratiate himself to the entire operation to the point where he gets taken down as a co-conspirator in the entire pimping operation.
Yeah, which in turn causes the entire science experiment to be left behind.
Yes.
Which sort of sets off our movie.
Yeah, Rita and Joe, they wake up 500 years in the future when a garbage avalanche, because their sleeper pods have basically been left to rot in some sort of, what do you call it, landfill?
Landfill. I mean, it's a landfill city.
Yeah,
It looks unbelievable. It looks so unbelievable, Eric. It looks as if they almost had to draw it.
Yes, a lot of interesting matte painting work in this movie, which is probably one of its charms. I actually liked its wide shots the best when you're trying to mix very stationary matte paintings with something in the foreground that was clearly shot on a green screen. It's charmingly low tech, but yeah, so they wake up 500 years in the future.
Yeah,
everybody
it was the great
dumb.
Garbage avalanche of 2505.
I mean, how much of the plot do we need to go into? I mean, he wakes up.
It's basically Joe's in the future. He thinks that there's a way to get back to the past. He thinks that there's a time machine, and he meets a young, dumb lawyer named Frito Bandito, played by Dax Shepard, who becomes sort of his Sherpa. And there's a whole time travel wish side plot that sort of guides him. And during this adventure, it turns out that everybody in the world now, is it the world? We don't know whether it's a world government. We don't know, no. But basically everybody has little barcodes on their arm. And if you don't have a barcode, you're in trouble, buddy.
That is correct. He doesn't have the barcode. He winds up getting arrested twice.
Yeah.
Once for not paying a hospital bill, because in the future, the hospital...
You got to pay right away.
Yeah. Pay right away, unless you're lucky enough to win at a slot machine in the hospital lobby.
Which actually feels like that might happen pretty soon.
Yeah, gambling-based healthcare system.
And so he has to take an IQ test in jail?
Which they say...
For the sake of the story.
For the sake of the story, because at some point they have to figure out how smart he is in a way that they would believe it. Because up until then, his relative intelligence and superiority over everybody else is written off as being a sign of, well, let's just say homosexuality.
Yes.
They use a different word, which is probably one of the reasons why I think this movie has not aged as well, because the first 15 minutes of it is just it's done satirically and done mostly to mock the people using the words.
Look, it's using the F word. And
F word.
The F word with a Y at the end of it.
They figure out he's the smartest person on earth. or at least in the
I don't
country.
figure. I mean, he takes a test and it turns out he has the highest IQ.
Yeah, which we can go into the bunkness of IQ tests in general. Maybe it's fitting that in the future they all think IQ tests mean something because IQ tests are dumb. But
But their IQ tests are pretty dumb. It's placing shapes in holes.
it's very preschool ABC mouse type stuff.
Yeah, it's a test like that you give like chimpanzees to be like, oh, like if you were like a bad scientist in the '60s, you would. That's like kind of like what you would do with chimpanzees.
If you're trying to figure out if chimpanzee's been cognitively impaired by its trip to space.
Yeah. Did they come back smarter? Did the beams make it smarter or not?
Yeah.
Stick this in a hole.
Get off my plane.
Anyway, he gets arrested a second time, but this time because they now know how smart he is not taken back to jail. He is taken where, Ben?
He is summoned to the White House.
To the White House. So I guess we'll save our full breakdown of this White House and the people he meets here and the president who he meets for our presidential section. But we can say that he does wind up being appointed because of his intelligence to
The Secretary of the Interior. As we all know, the smartest person in the United States should always be the Secretary of the Interior.
Of course, a job that even Joe is not sure what the job is. Because honestly, Ben, I'm not sure I could tell you exactly what the duties of the Secretary of the Interior are.
Well, I could tell you this. The job of the Secretary of the Interior is definitely not to figure out why crops aren't growing. I would think that'd be like a big team effort.
Yeah.
Soon enough, though, Joe does figure out why crops aren't growing in the year 2505. And that's because of electrolytes.
They've replaced the water used to help plants grow with the Gatorade of the future, Brondo.
Brondo's got what plants crave.
Yeah, it's got electrolytes.
What are electrolytes? Do you even know?
It's what they use to make Brondo.
Yeah, but why did they use them to make Brondo?
Because Brondo's got electrolytes.
Cool. Brondo has bought the FDA
FCC.
and the FCC.
So they basically can both make whatever they want and then market it however they want. The marketing says that because it has electrolytes, it is great. And why is it great? Because it has electrolytes.
Because it has electrolytes.
Yeah. And because of the full control that Brondo has over, because apparently they employ half the country.
Yep.
The Brondo Corporation, they got to replace all uses of water except...
Water is still used in toilets.
Yeah, still using toilets.
So, like, whenever anybody says, have you thought about water? They're like, you mean like in toilets?
Now, I'm no botanist, but I do know that if you put water on plants, they grow.
Well, I've never seen no plants grow out of no toilet.
And then when he finally is able to convince them to swap out the sprinkler system from Brondo to water, it forces the economy to sink because Brondo's stock drops because they're no longer being used to water the crops that can't grow. So half the country's now unemployed because the Brondo stock drops to zero.
And by the way, I can't imagine most of the people in this country are good at their jobs.
No, I mean, it makes me question exactly what kind of government they have, and maybe there's some communism going on. Maybe we'll see. We'll break it down.
Do you think there might be a universal income?
There might be something because it feels like this is a world where corporate America and the government have become so intermeshed with each other that you can no longer tell them apart. You know, to the point where is Brondo employing these people? Is it the government? The government, which, by the way, is officially the AOL, Time Warner, Taco Bell, U.S. government. Anyway, he winds up convincing them to swap out the Brondo for water because it takes a while for it to work and everyone's incredibly impatient and he sinks the economy. In the meantime, he winds up getting arrested for a third time and this time fully put on trial, which they did not have the budget for because they wind up doing the whole thing via courtroom sketch, which was a good way to save money.
Pretty funny.
Yeah. And so
he sent for rehabilitation. Great news.
Yeah, he served 1 day of rehabilitation, which unfortunately means he now has to face off with various, what would you call these, monster trucks with phallic weaponry?
Like monster truck, Mad Max, American Gladiators. He has to go up against none other than Beef Supreme.
Beef Supreme, who's driving the ass dozer. Also in the ring is the Dilldozer in the ass blaster.
Yeah.
These are the monster truck vehicles fully equipped with, call them ramming devices, maybe penetrating devices, but they're large, metal, and very painful looking. And because of his relative intelligence, he actually winds up defeating most of the people trying to kill him. Except, of course, you're right, for Beef Supreme, who winds up going full on, what was it, Running Man?
Yeah.
And then while that happens, Rita and Dax Shepard, they conscript a TV cameraman to follow them into the fields where it turns out some crops are finally growing.
Water works.
Yeah, which convinces the president that Joe was right, and none other than the president himself comes to the rescue in the life or death match to save Joe's life.
And gives him a full presidential pardon.
On the spot. And then we get a nice little wrap up afterwards where not only has Joe been pardoned. Oh, we also find out the time machine was all bunk. It wasn't a time machine.
It
was like a carousel of progress type thing at an amusement park. So he winds up being offered a job by the president. The job being
VP?
Vice President.
Yeah.
And then he is elected president. So we have two presidents to talk about. Rita becomes his first lady. They have 3 kids together. But of course, Dax Shepard playing the dumb lawyer.
And now his vice president.
Whereas they say that Joe and Rita have the 3 smartest kids alive. Dax Shepard goes on to have 32 kids.
32 kids.
32 of the dumbest kids ever to walk the earth.
So, implying that whatever Joe has done to momentarily help the world is going to be quickly outdone. Yeah, won't be enough. And that's the movie. Any general politics we want to break down before we jump into Camacho himself?
Camacho. It's got to come from deep inside you, Eric.
It does.
Got to feel the Dwayne, Elizondo, Mountain Dew, Herbert, Camacho.
I feel like between the name and the general performance that maybe their first choice wasn't Terry Crews.
You think it might have been The Rock?
I'm thinking it might have been Danny Trejo.
Okay.
You know, just to go with where it was filmed, Texas. You have the Robert Rodriguez angle. You know, I can see some overtures being made.
Okay.
I could see Trejo being a good Camacho.
Well, because at first, I hear Dwayne, I'm like, oh, it's The Rock. Then I hear Elizondo, I'm like, oh, Elizondo.
Hector Elizondo, of course.
Hector Elizondo, beloved character actor Hector Elizondo from
all the Gary
Woman.
Marshall movies. Yeah, all the Gary Marshall movies.
He would have been wonderful in the role. And then Mountain Dew, I'm like, could it just be like a talking can? Like from the state? And then it's like Herbert, and I'm thinking about Herbert Hoover, and maybe there's like a robotic Herbert Hoover, and then I hear Camacho, and I think Terry Crews, just because that's how my brain works.
Ladies and gentlemen, the President of America! President Camacho! Shut up!
So let's break down the 2 presidents.
We're only breaking down one president. What are you talking about?
There's 2 presidents in the movie, Ben.
There's 2 presidents. We don't know enough. Really know enough at the end. Actually, they tell
we
us
know enough.
that everything's screwed. We're only talking about one president. Nobody's coming in. Nobody's listening to the Idiocracy podcast, so we could break down the presidency of President Not Sure. Nobody gives a shit about that. They want us to talk about President Dwayne, Elizondo, Mountain Dew, Herbert, Camacho.
They do, but come on.
That's the most memorable character in the whole movie.
Except Joe, Not Sure, Luke Wilson, he does get to give the Dave speech at the end of the movie that puts everything in context.
There was a time in this country when smart people were considered cool. Well, maybe not cool, but smart people did things like build ships and pyramids, and they even went to the moon.
It was a good speech. He was doing the arm moving, the pointing.
Yeah.
We talked about it. We talked about President
fine.
Not Sure.
Yeah, he gets a good speech. Okay.
Camacho. What do we know? Like before we even meet President Camacho, what do we know about what's going on in the United States?
Well, we know that it has mostly merged, sold, been bought by corporate America.
Yeah. We know that people think that shit sucks because Joe's reading in the waiting room at the hospital. He's reading, of course, Hot Naked Chicks and World Report. And on the cover, it says, shit sucks.
We know that pretty much the entirety of the cabinet, as we know it today, still exists 500 years in the future.
Yep. Well, we know the narrator feeds us some information. We know the economy is in a state of deep neglect. We know that a dust bowl has ravaged food supplies.
We know that members of the cabinet all are forced to wear giant presidential seal medallions.
Yeah, those are pretty cool, though. Like rappers from the late 2000s into the early
like a Flavor Flav clock or something.
Flavor Flav.
Yeah. We know that the White House is still the center of the executive branch, and the legislative branch is now located in the House of Representing.
House of Representing. That seems like that's a John Leguizamo comedy special. We know that Carl's Jr. and corporations could actually take children from poor, unfit families. There's a scene where a woman is trying to get some Carl's Jr.
She's trying to get Carl's Jr., but because of the food shortage, she doesn't get any Carl's Jr.
But they take her money.
She can't. But they take her money. But because she now can't feed her kids, they now try to take her kids.
And from Joe, we also find out that this is a police state. People are arrested for not paying their hospital bills immediately.
There's a food shortage, as the president tells us, that they're running out of French fries and burrito coverings.
Which is pretty funny. So Joe is escorted to the White House. There's no security there.
Shocking little security. Well, we do see at certain points Secret Service agents who are not wearing suits.
Yeah.
And
they look like something out of what was the movie with Sylvester Stallone and Wesley Snipes?
Demolition Man. Yes.
They look like Demolition Man people.
Yeah, a lot of Demolition Man in this movie. Just replace Taco Bell with Carl's Jr.
The food, the fast food wars.
Yeah, which also had a fake president in it, Arnold Schwarzenegger.
Yeah.
Yeah, we should cover that someday.
We should cover that one. I love that movie. So the police drive him to the White House. There's an above ground pool. There's a lot of junk on the lawn. It's basically a trailer park, but with a White House.
Yeah, and inside the White House, walls have been just kind of torn through to put conference tables that were too big for the room.
Yeah, it's a little fratty.
It's a little fratty. Yeah, very, very fratty. So anyways, he finds out he's been made the Secretary of Interior. He gets to meet other members of the cabinet. He meets the Secretary of Energy.
It's a kid who won a contest.
Yeah. He meets the Secretary of State, brought to you by Carl's Jr.
I'm the Secretary of State, brought to you by Carl's Jr.
Brought to you. He keeps saying brought to you by Carl's Jr. because do you think he actually gets paid? He thinks he's being sponsored by Carl's Jr. So he always says brought to you by Carl's Jr.
I think he does. And I say that because clearly he was told by someone, if you keep saying that, we'll pay you. But in this future, one thing we learn, that being dumb also makes you fatally honest. I think the only lies told in this whole movie are by Rita and Joe.
Well, it's kind of like the invention of lying.
Very much so. And so I think he was told he would do that. I think someone at Carl's Jr. calls him up and says, how many times you say it? He honestly answers the question, and then they honestly pay him.
Yeah. Okay.
I think it's an honor system that works. We also meet the Secretary of Defense, an Attorney General, played by Sarah Rue, who they call Funbags. And we get to meet the Secretary of Education, who is none other than Camacho's stepbrother.
Yeah, it's nice. Keeps it in the family. Look, there's a long history of presidents and nepotism. John F. Kennedy and Robert Kennedy.
RFK was his Attorney General, who they also coincidentally called Funbags.
Yeah. I mean, if you ever saw him with his shirt off.
Yeah.
Yeah. Or also with his pants down. Didn't make a difference. Either way, he was known as Funbags.
Yeah. Someone should have kept it in his pants. Maybe it was.
Or at least at some point stopped. Stopped. Man. That is RFK Jr., man.
This is a presidential favor.
Anyway, so at the 42-minute mark of this movie, we do finally get to meet the President Camacho.
5-time Ultimate SmackDown champion, porn superstar, and President of the United States.
He rolls into the Oval Office. He's got lady friends with him.
And because he's so happy to meet Luke Wilson, although surprised to find out that the smartest man in the world does not have a big head.
Fair.
He does call a special summit to introduce the smartest man in the world, the newest member of his cabinet, to a joint session of Congress.
Yeah, he gets him sworn in immediately. He bypasses a confirmation hearing.
He's so happy to meet Luke Wilson's character. That was the first sign of a wholly fictitious moment. That does not ring true to me, because in real life, an idiot president thinks he's always the smartest person in the room and can't give anyone else credit for their intelligence.
Yeah, the reason why we started this podcast. But yeah, so he goes to the House of Representatives and he makes a huge WWE style entrance, gets up to the front and tells everybody to shut up, which is classic WWE heel move. Love it.
Yeah.
And he reads a speech. He knows how to read.
From a teleprompter.
From a teleprompter.
Which work the same way they work now. Look, if it's not broken, don't fix it.
Yeah. He talks about all the starving bullshit, and the Dust Bowl, and how they're running out of French fries and burrito coverings.
And then the next thing that happens truly took me by surprise.
Yeah, everybody doesn't fall lockstep with him.
Well, not just that, but you literally had the Joe Wilson you lie moment to President Obama years beforehand in this movie first. And not only is it eerily similar to that, but in real life, it was a congressperson from South Carolina who shouted at the president during a joint session of Congress. Here, it's a congressperson from South Carolina.
Yeah.
South Carolina, what's up?
South Carolina contingent representing. They call him a dipshit, and they say, I've got a solution. You're a dick.
And how does the POTUS shut them all up?
He takes out a machine gun that he keeps underneath the podium. Shoots it up in the air.
I got a 3-point plan to fix everything. Bring it down, Camacho.
And then Camacho, we get to hear his 3-point plan to fix everything. Point 1, Ben.
He's got Joe. He's got not sure.
Yeah. Point 2.
Not sure. He's got the highest IQ out of anybody in the world.
And then the third step of his 3-point plan.
Joe, aka not sure. He's going to fix everything.
So really, it's a 1-point plan.
Yeah.
Joe's going to do everything. He promises, I give you my word, he's going to fix the dust storms too. He's going to fix the economy, and he can do it all in 1 week as he sings. He starts singing during the joint session of Congress.
Is pure. He's not singing. He is preaching. He is taking it to church.
He's gonna be the economy. So smart. He's gonna do it all in 1 week.
And he's saying that not sure is gonna solve acne and car sickness.
Yeah. And if he doesn't do
it, Camacho makes a promise. He's gonna kick his smart balls all the way up his smart mouth and throw his brainy ass back in jail.
This is a president not afraid to make promises that he can keep.
He can keep. Yeah.
He also drives himself around within his own motorcade and some sort of motorcycle/tractor hybrid.
It's like a big. It seems like a parade celebrating that finally that they have answers, they have solutions. But I noticed something in this parade. I want to talk about the American flag.
Okay, what'd you notice about it, Ben?
I noticed that it only had 21 stars. I don't know whether maybe there was a misprint 200 years earlier. I don't know whether some states might have combined. I don't know whether maybe there was a civil war. Maybe there is a smart area, the smart free zone. Would that be the smart free? It would be the free zone full of smart people, maybe somewhere. I don't know. But I found it interesting that both flags did have 21 stars on them.
How dare you come into this office and bark at me like some little junkyard dog? I am the President of the United States.
Are there any clues here that can help us figure out party, how he got elected, what his history was before becoming president?
I mean, he appeared in a WWE-style show. He was a performer of sorts. Seems like he was the loudest person in the room. I mean, this is the most Trumpian president that we have seen.
Except, of course,
we don't know what his penis looks like.
He's also humble at times, able to admit when he's wrong. He's able to acknowledge skills other people that can have. Like, he is not the kind of autocrat who's always claiming that only he can fix things.
That is true. He's kind of dictator-ish. I mean, he presents power is the most important thing for him.
Yeah. No, he does not claim that only he can fix things. He claims that only Joe can fix things. Yeah. He likes to set other people up to be the potential fall guy, potentially preserving his own career.
Hey,
that
look,
said,
only the best people.
Yeah.
He only has the very best people.
Like his brother-in-law. Yeah. You're going to guess a party on this one, Ben?
Look, I don't even think political parties exist anymore. I don't think anybody would even understand. I would think like maybe the two political parties in America would be Brondo with electrolytes and maybe like a Burger King Carl's Jr. hybrid. Like those would be the two political parties.
Yeah.
Maybe Pornhub is a third party candidate. I don't know. It'd be something like that.
Starbucks with release.
Full release.
Yeah, yes, they're was it latte for gentlemen? Is that what they call it?
Yeah. Even H&R Block also provides full release as well.
How? Because I'm the goddamn president of the United States of America.
What do we think this movie actually says about the year it was made, 2006?
I mean, the year 2006, we've had when he was making it, what he made in 2004, 2005, we have 4 years of George Bush.
George Bush, who was not famous for his mental acuity?
That is true.
Look, I'm not saying he's a dumb guy. I went to Yale back when all you had to be was white and a guy. Or no, you had to have rich parents. I'm sorry. I did not give his parents enough credit for getting him into Yale.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think history has started to look more fondly on George W. Bush, which I think is interesting. It's 2023, and maybe it's just because of the people.
Because Michelle Obama gave him a piece of candy. You're like, oh, they like candy. Or he gave her candy?
Yeah.
I don't know. He gives out candy to people and he paints. Oh.
Yeah. But that's just, yeah. So, I mean, that's interesting. We never do get to meet the VP in this movie until Joe becomes the VP at the very end, right before he becomes president. In fact, I think he's only mentioned in dialogue that he becomes VP at some point. We never see him as the VP. So, I mean, that is an interesting thing to do in 2006 during a presidency famous for having a vice president who dominated the political scene. I mean, how many Daily Show segments were about Cheney and not about Bush?
I mean, Cheney in 2000 was tasked with finding a VP for Bush. And he was like, I guess the only person who could do it is this guy right here. Who's got 2 thumbs and 6 open heart surgeries and wants to be VP. This guy.
Okay, so what does this movie say about 2006? Well, before I can fully assess that, I gotta air my one big gripe with this movie.
Uh-oh, is this an episode of One Big Gripe with Eric Buckman?
One big gripe. Okay, so I told you I saw this movie in theaters. I was excited to see a movie that was set in the future, political satire, done by Mike Judge, like a live-action Futurama, which is a show I liked a lot. I was really looking forward to it, except for one reason and one reason only. And that a lot of the marketing came from like the first 5 minutes of this movie where they just set up the premise, which goes out of its way to say that because of natural selection, because of evolution, that people with high IQs are going to use those IQs to very carefully choose how to procreate and therefore reduce themselves in numbers. Meanwhile, people with low IQs will not care so much about the circumstances under which they have kids.
Yeah.
And will have a lot of kids. And over time, the low IQ bloodlines will reduce the high IQ bloodlines to nothing. And the problem I have with tying intelligence to genetics to bloodlines, it's dangerously close, if not exactly what German scientists were professing back in the 1920s. And I don't think I have to go into any more detail than that.
Well, but in 2023, if that idea is still out there, but now, speaking of in terms of like people with higher IQs, people in higher income brackets, they're natalists who believe we're not having enough children in the United States. So they're planning, not for religious reasons, but for patriotic reasons, to have many, 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 many children. And your man, Elon Musk, is kind of like one of those guys. There was the article, did you see that thing?
The interview with Grimes?
No, it was about this natalist movement, and they bring up Elon Musk, and it said that he has 9 known children.
Yes.
I love that little turn. Like, are there a bunch of kids out there who are like claiming that they might be Elon's child, but he's like saying that you're not mine? Like, it made it seem as if like if you're in the know, you know what we mean by this.
So if you're If you're an economic realist who understands that a growing population is fundamental to a prosperous economy, but you're also super anti-immigrant, then your only choice is to just encourage those already within your borders to keep, fucking and pumping.
Yeah, bumping and grinding.
So if you want to talk about what does this say about 2006, I think it shows what we weren't thinking about then. And to me, the concern of the future, especially 2023, it's not that we're getting dumber. It's that smarter people are getting better at hiding their racist, anti-Semitic ideologies through technical terms to confuse and mask their prejudices.
Is it hiding it? It's that they don't give a shit anymore. It's that we could just... every idea is valid. Free speech first and foremost.
Well, they're just asking questions, Ben.
You're just asking questions. I'm just doing my own research.
Look, if you feel so strong about this, Ben, why don't you come on my podcast and debate me?
I'm going to debate. Yeah. It's all about debate. Honest debate. Ugh.
Motherfucker, I'm not asking if you're interested. I'm the president of the United fucking States, man.
Let's take one last look at Camacho. What do we think his poll numbers are and his legacy?
Oh, his poll numbers will legitimately be 175%.
And his legacy? We know what his legacy was.
On the porn news channel, which, by the way, the porn news channel had fantastic porn puns. Like
the porn news channel, well, I don't know if we're talking about the same channel because there are a couple of different media exposures, but at some point we do see a news channel. They say what the news channel is. Fox News.
Okay, then the Fox News, there's some great porn puns that they're supplying there. But I think on that Fox News, I think Camacho's going to come out with an approval rating of 175%.
What's interesting about Mike Judge's version of future Fox News, what he chose, maybe this goes to your point about the apoliticalness of it all, is he chose not to accentuate its right-wing leanings and ideology, which by 2006 was already like the bread and butter of the Colbert Report. Yep. He chose to go with the more superficial aspects. The fact that the anchors of Fox News in the future is a guy with no shirt on and bulging muscles. He's a bodybuilder, and I'm not gonna lie, nice upper body.
But he was sitting down. He looked like a guy who kind of skips leg day.
Yeah, and his co-anchor is a lingerie-clad model. And so the two of them get to deliver the news.
Yeah, but Camacho, he will be a beloved president. The way that we have him on our artwork as part of the Mount Rushmore of fake presidents. I think Mount Rushmore in the year 2505 might just be four faces of Camacho.
Maybe.
And maybe his dick also. Maybe it's three faces and his dick.
Yeah, not enough full frontal in this movie. And I want to say his legacy is that he'll get credit for fixing America, but the fact that Joe succeeds him as president means everyone's aware of what Joe did. So at no point is Camacho trying to take credit for the work of anyone else. He's giving credit, which again is a thing you don't see even the good presidents don't give credit that well. Yeah. But so he's got a high approval rating. A strong legacy that's going to be, because he's the man behind the man who fixed everything. Well, thank you for tuning in to Idiocracy. We finally got to do another person who's really been part of the show since the beginning. He's on our Mount Rushmore that you see when you go to a lot of our social media pages or our YouTube page or any of the pages where you can find us.
He's a memorable character from a movie that, is what it is.
A memorable character from a less than memorable movie. A movie that's more famous for
having a great title. For having a great title.
Speaking of our social media, you can find us on Threads, Instagram, other social media platforms. We're all there under fake_presidents. You can email us at fakepresidents@gmail.com.
Our theme music today is by Johnny Sadoff. All of our beautiful artwork, including the OG artwork of our Mount Rushmore, is done by Ann Hacker.
If you've enjoyed our podcast, feel free to leave a review on your podcast platform of choice. Tell a friend. I'm serious. If you have any friends who are into politics and movies, politics and pop culture, and you think they get a kick out of a podcast that is kind of about both, let them know. Those are our people. We're a niche podcast. A niche podcast can only afford to keep going if they find their niche. You're our niche, dear audience.
Tune in next time. Bye.
Bye.
I found the original titles, the original working titles that Mike Judge had back in the day before they came up with Idiocracy. The United States of America.
America, the phrase America did catch on.
It did? It seems like a very David Letterman joke.
No, I take that back. Actually, you know what's kind of caught on? Just America.
America, yeah.
People say America when they're trying to impersonate a certain demographic, yeah.
And 3001, even though it takes place in 2505.
Yeah, and also 3000, year 3000 when Futurama took place. And at this point, I think there was already a sequel novel to 2001 called 3001. So maybe that's why that one didn't go.
Yeah. But I don't think anybody would ever say, you know what? Mike Judge was right. We really are living in the United States of America.